Well, good morning. Man, wasn't yesterday beautiful? I rode my bike yesterday, really probably too far. I felt a little bit like Esau when I got home. I pulled up, Amy was out in the yard, and I said, "Get in the truck. I got to eat something right now." No, but it was tiring. I at one point I walked by a mirror and noticed my face was doing this. So evidently I was in some kind of pain. I don't know. Yeah, there was probably some bugs in my teeth. Okay, well, we're going to continue the Overcomer series today. Uh, this series isn't one that is like just ooh and ah and amazing with all these new and crazy things you've never heard before. Um, it's not going to change the way that you wake up in the morning every day and life is just different from now on. But I do love this series because it's kind of one of those fundamental level studies. And on a fundamental level, it's one of this series goes over some of the things that I need to be reminded of on a very consistent basis. And if there's any phrase that I need to hear regularly, it's that you are an overcomer. Not because of anything that I did or could ever do, but because he did, Jesus. And why did he do it? Because he wanted to. God makes us overcomers through Christ. In preparing for each of these, each week I've found myself getting kind of lost in the notes and just kind of diving in and getting lost in the study. And it's a little different than normal just because it's more of God is really working on me, as I study this. Not that I'm just going down rabbit trails, but it takes me a long time to like get started. And where do I begin? Because God is doing so much work on me, it's like, I don't think I should be telling anybody about this because I'm the one that needs to hear it. um, so the study itself, it's interesting, but the main distraction is, wow, I really need to implement this right away. So today, I want to ask this question: Have you ever? This is kind of how this series has hit me. Have you ever walked around your house in the middle of the night and it's dark and you're trying to get to the light switch or whatever, and then you find it without tripping on anything. You turn on the light and you look around and you didn't realize that somebody had moved something around, and so you're like, "Woo, this is different." I wasn't expecting this. I'm glad I didn't trip on that. For me, that's kind of how this series has been. A while back, I guess it's been a few years now, I was walking to the bedroom in the middle of the night. It was dark. When Amy goes to bed before me, I try not to turn on any lights so I don't wake her up or anything. And this house, I've grown up in it my whole life, so I'm pretty familiar with it. So I can walk around in the dark pretty confidently. And this night, though, something was different, and I didn't realize it. I was walking at a normal walking pace as if the lights were on, and then boom, right into the door because Amy had shut the door to the bedroom. I didn't know it. uh, that's probably a more accurate description of how this series has been for me. I love the way that the New Living Translation phrases Paul's declaration of being overcomers in Romans chapter 8. In verse 37, it says, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ who loved us. Overwhelming victory. That's very inspiring to me. And I need this reminder a lot, consistently. When my alarm goes off in the morning, I don't feel victorious, especially overwhelmingly so. Zane once told me that getting older is a lot like becoming a different vehicle. When you're young, you're like a sports car. The alarm goes off, you pop up, you're ready to go. But the older you get, the more you become like a Buick, and you have to sit on the edge of the bed and warm up for 10 minutes before you can go anywhere. So I don't always feel victorious when my alarm goes off, especially when I'm realizing that I'm running late to get somewhere. I don't feel very victorious. When I'm trying to eat healthy and I can't avoid sweets, I don't feel victorious. Online, there's a few people that I follow, and it's mainly so I can have something to listen to when I ride my bike, but I'll go through seasons where I'll listen to their stuff more often. And the other day, one of them announced that they had been going through a divorce, and they decided they didn't want to keep it secret anymore. And, it was very sad news. It was kind of shocking. And my heart broke for this family and him, and especially since there's a lot of like Jerry Springer type drama going on around the whole ordeal. And after he explained it, he moved on to other topics, and then I had gotten distracted by all the other stuff he was talking about. And then later that day, I was telling Amy something, and I remembered it, and I was like, oh, hey, so-and-so is getting a divorce, and then continued on with the conversation. A few days later, I came across a video, not one of his, but one discussing this drama, and I was like, oh yeah, how sad, I forgot about that, what's going on with the drama now, and distracted again. And then quite some time later, it occurred to me that I'd learned about his divorce and then quickly moved on, forgetting about it. And then every time I remembered, I was distracted by one thing or another. And I had known about it for several days. And at that point, up until that point, I had not one single time prayed for him or his family or his kids. And as I replay that in my head, that timeline, not only did I not pray for them, but by all appearances, I cared more about all this other stuff, these distractions. So the next thing that, I start to wonder is, what's wrong with me? Because I have been there. I know, not exactly his story, but I kind of know what you go through in those situations, the emotional hole that you're just forced to exist in during a divorce. And yet when a fellow Christ follower is going through something similar, I quickly move on and forget about it. So why? How? Today, we're talking about overcoming apathy. And some people say that it because of social media, many people are so self-absorbed with their own public presence online or whatever that they've become morally apathetic. Some even call this generation the apathetic generation. But whatever the reason might be for it, people have a lack of concern, a lack of interest, or just a lack of passion about something that should be. It's no big deal. I don't really care a whole lot anyway. It's not worth my effort. I have all this stuff going on. I don't really want to get involved. Apathy. Jesus told a similar story, a parable in chapter 10 of Luke one day. He was talking about, or there was this religious expert that decided to test Jesus. And he asked Jesus what he should do to inherit eternal life. This guy, when he's asking Jesus this, he's essentially asking, where's the bar? What is the minimum that I got to do here? This turns his question back on him and asks how he interprets the law, Moses' law. And the man says, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus is like, gold star, you got it. That's right. But remember, this guy's looking for the low bar. So he's doing the same thing that I did whenever I went to take my driving test, and it's like, or when you're in school, and you have to take a test that day. What's the first thing you ask? How many questions can I get wrong? What's the minimum that I have to hear? What grade do I need to pass this class? So that's what he's doing. Jesus, what is the minimum? Who is the neighbor? It says love your neighbor. Who is that? Do I have to love this guy over here? Is there a number? 5, 10, everyone? So then that's what Jesus tells the parable. He said there was a Jewish man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, and while traveling, and I'm sure we all remember this story, while traveling he was attacked and left for dead, and left naked in a ditch. And by the way, Jesus described this, he wouldn't have just looked like somebody sleeping off last night's last night's party in the ditch. He looked pretty rough. He was beat up. He would have been bruised, bloody, barely alive. So Jesus, who am I supposed to love? Well, there's this dude laying in a ditch, naked, beat up, dying. And then verse 31, he says, by chance, a priest came along. But when he saw the man laying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. So this guy, he's in a real bad way, and the priest wanted nothing to do with him. Maybe he's, pretending the guy's not there, like, ooh, looking around, pulls out his phone, he's got important stuff, thumbing through some papers, looking at the clouds, like, oh, there's a lion. Oh, a snail attacking a squirrel. I love clouds. So, this priest, he walks by, tries to move on. And then in verse 32, a temple assistant, a Levite, walks by. It says the temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Maybe this guy, he wasn't as prepared. His eyesight wasn't as good or something. So, I see him kind of squinting, like, what is that? And he gets up close enough to see, and as he gets close enough to recognize what's going on, he's, oh, and then, heads to the other side. And it's been a while since I've read this parable, but in all honesty, I see a lot of myself in these people sometimes in this story. Not just with the divorce thing that I mentioned earlier, but even meeting people on the side of the road. Not very long ago, you didn't really see a whole lot of people, or at least on the roads I was on, I didn't see a whole lot of people down highways out here. You'd see it, but not as often as you do today. It seems like now about at least once a week I see, going to work somewhere, I see people walking up and down the roads. It wasn't that long ago either that, you'd see somebody on the side of the road and I'd try to check on them. If I wasn't just absolutely no way I could, I'd try to at least be like, hey, are you okay, or whatever. But sadly now I find myself doing the looking at the clouds thing, looking at the other side of the road, or oh, I don't have time, I got to get here, or there's not room in the truck. It could be dangerous. It's probably dangerous. I'm busy anyway. It's not even my problem. It's not worth the effort. So what a picture of apathy in Jesus' story. Right in the middle of his story about the most important thing, the greatest commandment, he's telling this parable, and there's these apathetic people. If you've ever wrestled with apathy, this story will poke a hole in your heart pretty quick. And it doesn't have to be about this. It can be about anything. Earlier I mentioned the divorce thing or whatever. Maybe something that God's put on your heart and you've learned to be apathetic about it. So why is it that sometimes then I act more like these two guys than the guy that Jesus talks about at the end of the story that helped the man? Why is it that I don't care like Jesus calls me to care? Why does apathy win sometimes? So in a few minutes, I want to look at some ways to overcome apathy, but first, I want to explain the question, why is it difficult to care sometimes? Why is it so hard? And you may not struggle with apathy at all. Like I said, this is where God was really working on me getting ready for all this. But I would also, if that's you, don't become apathetic about this, because you may be close to somebody who does. And I think understanding this might help you understand that person if you've ever thought, what's wrong with them? On the other hand, you may be a little bit more like me, and maybe you have your own list of apathy instigators already. Don't be afraid of those things on that list. Write them down and realize that we are overcomers through Christ, and in Him we have overwhelming victory. That's what this is about. This list of yours, this list that I'm going to go through, it will not and it cannot stand between you and God. So we need to know our enemy and know that we are an overcomer. So why don't I care like Jesus calls me to care? Here, I'm going to give 3 reasons, and they're probably 3 in my life. First, why don't we care like Jesus calls us to care? The volume of information that we face today is sometimes pretty overwhelming. Say you're curious about what's going on in the world today. So you go to your favorite news site online, whatever, and within 5 minutes, you're getting overwhelmed with stuff. We're on the brink of World War III. The economic crisis is shutting down some of your favorite stores. About to crash. Banks are going into default. Someone has been stealing credit card numbers from your restaurant, and then a dude in Ohio saw Jesus' face in his French toast this morning. It's just in an instant you learn all this stuff, and it's just overwhelming. And sometimes you simply don't have the capacity to care about all this anymore. It's too much. You try, but there's just too many things to care about. It gets overwhelming, and in a short amount of time, you're just done. We're constantly exposed to this, this is the most important thing you could ever hear right now, listen to me. We're constantly exposed to this important, life-changing, life-altering stories, and after a while, they just become another tragedy in the list of tragedies, and it starts to become white noise. It's just another bombing, another tornado, another crisis. And sometimes it's just too difficult to care. So the volume of information can be overwhelming. Second, we may feel helpless to make a difference, to change anything. It's hard to care about something that you can't do much about. You probably really do care and you really want to do something, but you just feel completely helpless. I'm just one person. I don't have enough money to give. I don't have enough time to go. I don't even know where to begin. How could I make a difference? I'm just trying to survive myself. I've got all these problems that I'm focused on, like paying the bills and raising the kids and fixing the roof and whatever else. So why don't I care? Because sometimes it's overwhelming. Second, it can make you feel helpless to make a change. And third, we are blessed and cursed with comfort. Now, have you ever just paused and just thought about how amazing life is right now? Where we live at least. Sure, there's struggles and it's difficult and there are people trying to take away some of your rights, but right now in this country, life is way more comfortable than ever. If you think about it, you can wake up in the morning and decide what you're going to do and pave your way to it. No other country in the world even allows this. Even just on a more basic level, you can get in your car, you can drive several miles in just a few minutes. We don't have to walk across undeveloped lands like, a couple hundred years ago. You can pull up to a window and you're staying in your car and tell somebody what you're craving at the moment, and in a matter of minutes you've got this big juicy cheeseburger, a milkshake, and a big pop or whatever. And you didn't have to walk, you didn't have to slaughter the cow, you didn't have to make the ice cream. You just, hey, I'm craving this, here you go, give me $5 or whatever. What if you don't feel like getting out of the house? In some of the larger towns around here, especially if you live like in the city or something, you don't have to. Most places will deliver. Or if they don't deliver, they have access to things like DoorDash now, where all you have to do is pull out your phone, tap a few buttons, and then wait for your pizza to knock on the door. And it doesn't even have to be food. You can avoid having to wander around stores looking for this one obscure item that you've been needing for several months by just simply pulling it up on your phone and tapping some buttons again, and then it's going to be delivered right to your house. And if you have a device like Amazon Alexa, you can just say, Alexa, order my printer ink, and then a couple days later you got printer ink. You don't have to wait for 7 p.m. on Thursday nights anymore for your favorite TV show. You just pull it up online and binge watch every episode if you want. So, like I said, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse. Because what happens when we lose one of these amazing pieces of comfort? Say you're watching TV and then the picture starts getting fuzzy and then all of a sudden it pauses and you see that little wheel turning, buffering. You want to see somebody get frustrated in their house if they have wireless internet on a stormy night when they're trying to watch TV, especially if it's not a school night, so all the kids are on computers too. We'll be griping like, what is going on with the internet? Get on Facebook right now and tell them how horrible this is. It's true. Or you get stuck through line. What's going on up there? What did this dude order? A cheeseburger from India? So comfort, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse, because what happens is life all of a sudden starts to become about me, about my comfort. The more comfortable life becomes, the more it becomes about me. So how do we overcome apathy? How do I go from the curse of comfort and not caring about external things to a place of passion and genuine concern for my neighbor. Often apathy comes from feeling overwhelmed or feeling helpless or being overly concerned with comfort like we talked about. So taking notes, what we want to do is turn those things around. How do we overcome apathy? First, we should consistently expose ourselves to something that makes us righteously uncomfortable. Consistency is the key word here. Probably the most important part of that thought. A lack of consistency results in a lack of interest. So say you do something once or twice and you really felt like it was meaningful, it changed the way that you looked at something, it made a huge impact on your life, but then over time you forget about it and life goes back to normal. For example, if you've ever been on a mission trip, this is a pretty common thing to happen, or church camp or marriage retreat or something similar. You were probably very uncomfortable at first. On the mission trip, you show up and you see all this poverty and horrible living conditions, and it just breaks your heart. And then while you're there, something shifts in you, and then you're thinking, I'm never going to be the same. I'm never going to be the same when I go home. And then you go from caring about what these people do or don't have to, all of a sudden you're just you care about them as people and you love them. And then you come home, and if you don't consistently expose yourself to something that makes you righteously uncomfortable, life gradually starts to take back over, and then it just goes back to normal. It's normal. You have to focus on the bills, you focus on the kids, the job, whatever, the water leak in the kitchen, and before long, the apathy comes back. So before you just start throwing yourself into awkward situations trying to make yourself uncomfortable, let me explain righteous discomfort. When you expose yourself to something that makes you righteously comfortable, you're putting yourself around things that move you on behalf of God. You're around things that break the heart of God, and then that starts to break your heart. So then, what happens is you start to realize, hey, I'm not okay with this either. I can't allow this to happen. And then you start to realize that God put you here to make a difference, and apathy just cannot exist in your heart. A righteous discomfort will transform that apathy into a fiercely righteous passion. So when I think of somebody that's fiercely righteous, I think of Paul. Before Paul was Paul, he was Saul, and Saul spent a lot of time and energy hating and killing Christians, Christ followers. And at a certain point, God changed his heart. And then Paul had this fiercely righteous passion for his kinsmen, for the Israelites. And he wanted them to know and be saved by Christ. So right after Paul writes that we are more than conquerors, he tells us what makes him righteously passionate. In chapter 9, verse 1, he starts off by saying, listen guys, I'm dead serious about this. With Christ as my witness, he says, I speak with utter truthfulness. My conscience and the Holy Spirit confirm it. So 3 times he says, I'm serious. I'm telling you the truth. This is important. In Paul's culture, saying something 3 times, that is as serious as it gets. There's no way to make something more important or more of a bigger deal. And so he says this 3 times. God is my witness. I'm telling you the truth about this. Verse 2, my heart is filled with bitter sorrow and unending grief for my people, my Jewish brothers and sisters. I would be willing to be forever cursed, cut off from Christ, if it would save them. So he just gets through listing in chapter 8, all this, these great things about God. We're more than conquerors. God loves us. He chose us. Nothing can separate you from God's love. He helps us in our weaknesses, and one day He's going to give you a new body, and you can't even imagine how amazing this is going to be, and all these things. And then He says, but I promise you, I'd walk away from it. I'd give it all up and suffer for eternity if it would save my people, make them right with God. That is a fiercely righteous passion. When you really, really care. You just can't do nothing. Instead, you're willing to give up everything. So to overcome apathy, we need to consistently expose ourselves to something that creates a righteous discomfort. And then next, we need to channel that passion by focusing on something. Sometimes there are just too many things to care about, like we talked about. That's okay. You don't have to care about all of it. You don't have to give your undying attention to everything you learn about in a day. Instead, focus on something. Many things will catch your attention, but few things will capture your heart. So what captures your heart? When you watch the news, many things are going to concern you, but maybe for you, when you hear a story about unborn children, your heart breaks, and suddenly you become righteously uncomfortable. Or maybe you are really passionate about human trafficking. Maybe you have a heart for people in other countries who don't have access to clean drinking water, or you feel, passionate about helping somebody like that. You may feel this urge well up in you that you have this calling or desire to start something that somebody else in your area isn't already doing. Maybe you want to invest in people who are struggling with addiction or mental illness. You feel called to start some place where these people can go to get on their feet, to find direction. Maybe you've been there before with addictions or heartbreak, and you know that you made it through with God, and you just want to share that, and you want to help somebody else in that situation, lead them to Jesus, who can radically transform their lives like He did yours. Maybe you don't feel called to start something, that's too much work, but maybe you want to help with something that's already up and running. You could join up with a group of people going on a mission trip, or help with someone's discipleship program or Bible study. So the point is, instead of trying to make a small difference in several different places, choose to make a big difference in just a few, or even just one. When Jesus showed up, He was focused. He was really focused. He stated many, many times that He came to save the lost, to seek and save the lost. He repeated it over again, using different words and different phrases, in different ways. He came to set the captives free. He came so that people would have life. He didn't come for the righteous but the lost. As the sick that need a doctor, not the healthy. He was very focused. So when the voice in your head starts telling you that it's not possible, don't listen to it. That's the beginning of apathy. Apathy always tries to find an excuse, but passion, on the other hand, finds a way. So channel that passion by focusing on something. Sometimes it'll feel like too much, and you feel helpless, and that's when it may be time to embrace pain, embrace what hurts. So in that same verse, Paul said, my heart is filled with bitter sorrow and undying grief. He was embracing that grief, and it drove him forward. He was using that pain, that hurt, to drive him forward. A lie that apathy and comfort wants you to believe is that it's not easier to care. It's easier not to care, excuse me. It's easier not to care. But that's not. The lie is that it's better if you just don't even get involved. When you think about it, in order to believe that lie, what you have to do is concede your purpose, concede that thing that's driving you. And we all have a purpose, and if you never allow yourself to let go of that purpose, then you're going to realize that it's actually easier to hurt with a purpose than to exist without one. Better to hurt with a divine calling than to live without that. So often, too many people think of blessings as more of the stuff that I want, God's blessed with all the stuff that I love. And I don't think that that's what God intends at all. In fact, I think that kind of thing is what leads to us being and worshiping and idolizing stuff. Sometimes it's important for me to step back and realize that what I actually need to see as blessings are burdens. We need to be blessed with a burden. When you read Scripture, you'll see over and over and over again people who were blessed with a burden. Moses was blessed with a burden. He didn't think it was right for his people to be treated as they were. So at some point he goes to Pharaoh and he says, "Let my people go." David was blessed with a burden when he was just a kid. What could a kid do? Nobody else was standing up against this giant Goliath, but David, he was blessed with this burden. Who are you to come against the armies of my living God? Later, when David was the one causing the hurt, Nathan was blessed with a burden. And this burden to stand up to the powerful king. And he tells David a story of an evil man. And then he says, "You are that man." Jesus was blessed with a burden. And how thankful I am that he did not allow apathy to lull him into a state of comfort when he had the burden of the lost sheep who needed a shepherd. So to close out, I want to share a powerful thought. And it's a